Welcome in, welcome in. This is another info session for Intro to Holistic Medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Erica Steele. And I'll be getting started in a few minutes. Kindly tap the screen and share the live for me. Hey, oh, Kirby. Well, let's get that all worked out. Let's get you reorganized. For sure. I'm just going to share this out to a few people. If everyone wouldn't mind to friend my other account, Decolonize Your Healthcare. That way I can put everybody in like groups and stuff and share it out when I go live. We should be able to get enough contact with stuff. All right. Let us see. All right, we should be good. All right. Hello, everyone. Let me get this where I need it. All right, perfect. All right. I think we should be pretty good. Continue to tap the screen for me while I get this organized and share the live. Okay, cool. I think I got almost everything. Oh, this is like way up here. All right, sweet. So, I did a lot of work this morning. All right, so if you are registered for the class, you should have just received an email not long ago with kind of information about this week and this week's class and that sort of thing. Also, if you haven't joined your community yet, please do that. Because it's, I put information in there, and based off of the community that you are in, the information may be a little bit different. Not to say that like one is getting another, I don't want you to feel you can join multiple communities. It's just sometimes, I want to emphasize more things to this group versus this group. So just, just be aware. So if you haven't registered, you feel free to do so. There's a link in my bio that you can do that. So you would just click the link in the bio. It's like a Nubo link. And then it'll take you out of whatever app you're on, if you're on YouTube or if you're on TikTok. And then from there, it'll pull up, a form, complete the form for me. And then it will send you kind of the emails, and I pretty much send an email a day just so everybody is aware, so I keep that communication going. Once you have registered for the class and picked your community, you'll be in the particular community, and as you can see, if you're already in the community, it's lots of information that you are provided. Our class technically, begins this week. So again, I have a live lecture tomorrow, Wednesday, at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that live lecture will be held on YouTube and TikTok, etc. If you cannot catch the live class. If you're in the community, you will actually get the replay. However, if you're not in the class and you're not in a community, you will not get the replay. So make sure that you are registered for the class, for one, and in your community too. So you'll have access to the class. So if you're already in your community, there is a couple different tabs. So there is a events tab, and so in the events tab, I have put the classes for this week. As you know, I teach a morning flow class. It's 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I teach that, throughout. So that class is actually in there under events. You can put it on your calendar. And like I said, if I get enough Pacific people, I will do kind of an afternoon, which will be their morning. So there's that. Then there is also a course tab, or a learning tab, I think is what it's called. And underneath there is where your course shell is for your intro to holistic medicine. So you'll be able to already have gone through there, hopefully, and look through I didn't put the course syllabus in there, but I will. You should have gotten it in the email though. And so in there it has everything that we're going to work on for this week. So if you want to, you can go through and look through there. There's tons of books and tons of references, so please do not overwhelm yourself, overload yourself. Take it easy. Like I said, it's kind of like going to be a fire hose of information. And really, this week is just about kind of getting settled and getting used to how how it works, at least with me. I can't speak for other people, but or other companies or other organizations, etc. But for how I run my my practice and my education, as you can see, it's very organized, and we try to make sure everybody gets what they need. So once you're in there, you'll be able to look at everything and just read. I also went through today and posted discussions. So I went through and put kind of pre-education, if you will, to go through and look through things, and once it's kind of finalized, if you will, I'll tag everybody in it. I just didn't want to I wanted to make sure it was all done before I sent everybody out their information. I didn't want to overwhelm people, and I'm still trying to kind of get a flow in terms of how I want to get information out. I did go through the security, et cetera, that I need to go through for text. So I'll be able to, once that's all cleared, I'll be able to then text you and let you guys know when I'm going live. And also let you know, when classes or whatever. You can opt out at any time. But I try to make it easy and also try to get people at different kind of learning areas. If you are a paid participant, you will get a certificate at the end. That is a prerequisite for our holistic health coaching program. If you need like CUs for, different, like there's CUs for massage therapy, or there's CUs for nursing, or those sorts of things, just get with me and we'll talk about it. It's usually just a paperwork kind of thing. So we'll look at that. Also, what was I going to say? There was something else I was going to say about that. Okay, so the course goes, it's a 12-week course. There's 3 parts. The first 4 weeks we really talk about foundation. So this week it's kind of heavy, because we really and I'll teach about it once I get through this part. We're really kind of getting into where we are in the healthcare landscape. And so we understand, where we are in space and time, where we've been, perhaps where we're going, we don't know, and where at least we are in the present, so we can navigate and make decisions for both ourselves as well as our family, and then in addition to that, our community. So This is a very interactive learning environment, if you cannot tell already. So between, the remote patient monitoring, which we'll get into, with the remote patient monitoring, we'll do two separate data points. We'll do subjective. So and during that week, you'll make sure that you have your app downloaded and fill out your first questionnaire, and then I'll evaluate that questionnaire, and then you'll get that information back. And that will serve, is additional information for you in your health. And that's all done through, everything that we do is HIPAA compliant, but that's done kind of on an individual basis just because of your data. And it's all run through that app companion. So when you get into your community, on the right hand side, there's a few different resources. One of them is the Holistic Life app. Then there's like a healthy eating guide, and there's a few different things. So definitely go ahead and pull that together and download it and all of that. Okay. Yeah, so subjective, and then when we move into the objective, we will really work with 3 data points. We're going to work with salivary pH, which helps us to assess digestion, urinary pH, which helps us to assess oxidative stress or toxicity within the body, and then we'll be doing heart rate to assess stress. So what we're also doing is what we call biofeedback. So bio meaning the body, feedback meaning we're getting feedback from the body. And so we're looking at the nervous system, and we're looking at the digestive process and all of that. So just kind of the beginning of understanding where we get the information from. So it's very data driven. So we don't, in our practice, we don't guess, we test. And through that evaluation, then we make decisions about our health. And so it's a very informed methodology. So in this week, we'll talk about, ethics in holistic medicine. We'll talk about ethics when it comes to conventional medicine. We'll talk about ethics as it comes to holistic medicine and holistic practitioners and providers. We'll go into jurisprudence, which is pretty much the understanding of licensure and, non-licensure and where that came to be. I pulled a couple videos for you guys actually about Rockefeller and Carnegie and the Flexner Report. So there is actually a documentary somewhere. I won't torture you through a documentary, but it's actually really hard to find. And so I can only get clips of it. And so so it's really good. It's one of those things that they ran on PBS or whatever. It's no wonder they're trying to take that thing down. So anywho, it's like kind of a black and white, and it goes into, what happened with Rockefeller, what happened with Carnegie, what happened with the Flexner Report, what happened with the medical monopoly, and how we've gotten to where we've gotten in medicine. And then we'll also look at in our current healthcare policy where we are today, and why RFK Jr. is actually sitting in that spot. So one of the references that we are going through is actually his book, the real Anthony Fauci, because that's where we're going, and so it's better to be prepared, and it's better to be awake than to be not awake. And oh my God. So we'll be looking at that. We'll also be looking at Goodbye Germ Theory, which is very much in that same alignment. That was written by Dr. William long time ago. Well, not long, just a long in terms of references. And he really goes into, again, that public policy legislation, and again, this fight for natural health care. So even in my profession, In our congressional record, and by my profession I mean a naturopath, because I have hello, because I've several different educations points, and those different educations give me different vantage points, right? So remember, when you go into one field, you go into one aspect of the field. Well, I went into all different aspects of the field to really understand it and get a holistic view, because I'm a holistic doctor, right? Hello. So anywho, I wasn't one of those kids that was just satisfied with, I told you so. So I wanted to understand what was actually going on. And so when we're looking at the healthcare system, we're looking at a lot of different components. We're looking at it from a clinical perspective. We're looking at it from a patient perspective. We're looking at it from a research perspective. We're looking at it from a public policy perspective. We have to look at it from all of these different perspectives, because really what we can do is this, very simply. Our health is a human right? For us to be healthy should be implied. But for some reason, it's very confusing for the system, okay? So the system, right, which is called our healthcare system, is not really our healthcare system, but it's actually our disease management system. So the wool was kind of pulled out from underneath everybody back in like the 1900s. And so if you're not familiar with Rockefeller, if you're not familiar with the Flexner Report, we are going to get very familiar with it, because this week we're talking about, this is a foundational piece of why holistic medicine is the way it is, right? It was never about science. It was never about, do we know what we're doing? It was never about that. It was always about profiteering. It was always about generating revenue. And now we have an insanely out of control, profit-centered disease management system that people still think is a healthcare system. And so we also will get into superiority bias. We'll get into confirmation bias, because that also drives decision making, because most everyone has been programmed into a disease management model and a disease management system. And so everyone tends to be highly reactive with their health care. So they'll do their annual appointment and that's it. But they are not measuring or monitoring how much water they're drinking every day, or how much protein they're eating, or how many steps they're getting, or any of these basic metrics. And so they don't really know. And then they definitely, if there's a disconnect with that information, there definitely is going to be a disconnect in what to do with that information. So in the second part of the class, after we really kind of delve into some of this data, we then talk about what we can do with it in terms of our nutrition. So we'll talk all about nutrition. We'll talk about mindfulness and meditation. So the heart rate monitor will really come in handy. Then we'll also talk about movement and exercise and the importance of that. And then we'll talk a little bit about natural remedies and, ways to kind of biohack the body, because, we're not perfect and, life goes on. So I'll give you some of those kind of simple tools based off of the data you collect. And then we'll really talk about integration, and we'll talk about, where we are in terms of, healthcare and education, and just how these two things, coexist or commingle. So, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. Presente. So if you're really, I have been in natural healthcare for a long time. I've been in natural health for over 20 years, and I had a family practice in Virginia Beach for about 15 years, and I've done a lot of work in the field. I have 7 degrees in my field, and again, I had just taken a year off to really sit back and study the healthcare system and study what is needed, and I actually created these communities as an aspect of really serving the public, because there is a need for healthcare information. There's a need for access, right? And so it really solves those, right? And also too, I really looked at three different components of my MBA. I looked at the public access issue. I looked at the public education issue in terms of quality education, like what you actually need to do proactively, not some political, like, okay, like you guys can go do your thing, but like we need to know what to do with our health in the meantime. So, there's that. So, I saw that. But then also, too, the stress and the burden on the providers, because myself, I mean, at one time, I was working 16, 18-hour days on and on and on and on. And it wasn't as though like, wasn't like people got better. People did get better, obviously, that followed directions, etc. However, I found that there was still a lot of resistance to people wanting to get well and wanting to heal. So doing it more in an education model and more in a technology-based model really provides people more, again, access, right? And people can come as close or as far as they want. Actually, the companion app, when I have open office hours, the open office hours are held through there, and I will send messages out for those people that are in the that particular app. There's two apps, by the way. There's one that's just for the community and public health education, and that's where that intro to holistic medicine lives. Once I go through it live once, it'll live in there forever. And so anybody that wants to take it will be able to take it. I will be, again, doing it live for the next 12 weeks, though. So you'll be able to, speak to me about it, that sort of thing. I actually have a lot of courses that I've done in various so many different things, all sorts of different skills, that I saw in family practice that people really needed, whether it was time management or it was decision making or it was trauma in relationships or healthy boundaries or learning how to journal, because some people need prompts, or it was learning how to meditate or toxins in their home or learning about different water and what water to drink. And so there's all kinds of different learning opportunities that I've had and I've built for a long time. It's just transitioning from more of that clinical practice more into public health education. So I opened my school about a year ago and just slowly, I'm more of a slow burn kind of gal. I like to learn things really well and be able to be of service rather than and then crash and burn and not be able to keep up with people's needs, right? And so in business, for many years, one of the things that really served me was operations, right? And understanding how things work and organizational systems. And even in my PhD now, which I'm on a pause for just to kind of get this launch off the ground, is really organizational systems and how to really create more homogenous communities and create communities that really serve people in a healthy and dynamic way. So I'm really hoping that these communities that I've built really serve everyone in a very loving way, in a very supportive way, and also in a way that really, supports and soothes people wherever they're at, and so there's a lot of support and access and just a lot of people as we're kind of filtering in, hello, everybody's kind of getting situated. I always kind of assume like the first week of class is like really kind of chaotic and you're trying to get the hang of it and what's this and what's that and I don't know what this is and I don't know what that is. So, it's okay wherever you're at, right, is perfect because I've learned over the years to kind of control chaos, right? And to again be in the flow, right? So that's why I teach morning flow, because it is a way that I have found for me to really set my tone for the day and really just flow through. So like this morning, gosh, all of the work that I got done, amazing. So excited, to the point where it's like, okay, let me take a break, and go on live and, answer any questions and just make sure everybody connects, because I know that, in a digital learning environment, it's a little different, right? And so wanting to make sure that there is some connection and, understanding and that sort of thing. So I was going to, if there's no questions about registration, I was going to do a little bit of teaching, kind of like a pre-teach. So hold on one second. All right, hold on. I'm going to do a whole thing on that. Oh. Yeah, that's totally fine. You're good. Do your thing. Do your thing. Do your thing. Whatever works. You know where to find it in the email. Okay, so here's where we're going to start. All right. I think I got it. All right. So, what are the key differences between holistic medicine? I'm so good. Hey, good to see you, third man. What are the distinct differences between conventional medicine and holistic medicine? It's really in how we view the body, okay? So, remember what I said in the beginning, it's like kick out everything that you think you know about health, healthcare, etc. Because health is not something that we manage, okay? Health is a state that we create. Okay, so words and language are very important. They're important to any profession that you are in, right? There is a language that we speak. And so in holistic medicine, there is clearly a language that we speak, right? Part of the reason that I speak in these exacting terms is because it's important for us to have a structure, right? Because otherwise, if I'm calling this that and I'm calling this, you're going to be confused. And when you see these things, you're not going to be able to communicate them. And so then when you communicate them back to me, if you're communicating them in a way that is not the actual way that we learn it, I'm going to know that you actually are not trained and you're more so just kind of doing this, as a side. So we want to, if we're going to do this, as a profession, or if we're going to do this just, as a person, we want to make sure that we understand what it is we're actually doing. And we want to define these things so we have some level of understanding. Okay, so how we view the body. So think before colonization, okay? Before colonization, we are, living on our land. We are eating the food on our land. We are drinking the water on our land. You get the point. If we get sick, we use herbs, etc. We kind of have understood this very intuitive connection and this bond, with mother nature and earth. So then colonizers come, and whatever the point of impact colonization happened in your bloodline, which we can determine based using genetics now, right? So based off of the impact, right, of when that occurred, now you are no longer, now you're being ripped away, subjugated, pulled away from your original healthcare practices, right? And we know that historically speaking, through public health and various different infections and that sort of thing, that, and even back it up, they used to actually define disease by humors, right? And humors were, smells within the body. They would then say, oh, okay, now we need to do something, right? So to the point that the body has to smell, you can imagine that there was a lot of bacterias and things like that were growing, right? And so at the time, Louis Pasteur really studied these things, and he developed this germ theory stating that all diseases kind of began and end from these germs, right? At the same time, Anthony Béchamp, really, he was also at the same time kind of a French biologist, I believe, believed it was about the environment, the internal environment that things are in, meaning that if we keep the body well, the body intuitively knows how to heal itself, and so then therefore, it'll keep itself well. Well, Louis Pasteur was, very much into politics and knew a lot of people in that department, right? And then also at the same time, we had Rockefeller and Carnegie that got in trouble for philandering, or no, hold on, they got in trouble for racketeering, and they needed, to get out of it kind of with philanthropic activity, right? And so they started Rockefeller Philanthropies, which is still going even to this day, and they do global research and all kinds of things. So anywho, back in the day, they did this, but they had to, they needed a product, or they needed something to sell. So at that time, a lot of the doctors, they practiced all kinds of different medicines. So, medical doctors would practice with herbal medicine, and naturopaths would practice obviously with natural things. And there was chiropractors, and there was osteopaths, and there's all these different types of healthcare professionals, but they all also use naturally occurring substances. Like it wasn't regulated and restricted as it is now. So Rockefeller said, "Oh, he actually purchased petroleum, from Germany." Okay, and you know what was going on in Germany, right? Post World War II. So they bought a lot of petroleum from Germany, and then they used the petroleum and combined it with naturally occurring substances to create pharmaceuticals, right? And so then he paid for this gentleman to go out by the name of Flexner, the Flexner Report, to pretty much discredit all natural substances, tell everybody, this is horrible, this is terrible, this is not what you can do, etc., in favor only for pharmaceuticals and surgeries and procedures, and all falling under germ theory, right? So germ theory is very simple. Health is built off of, conventional medicine is built off of germ theory, and this is the only thing that germ theory states. And we saw this during COVID, so hopefully you're paying attention. So sanitation, right? So obviously keeping things clean, so washing hands and wiping surfaces. Antibiotics or vaccinations, right? That's considered health. Then you also have pharmaceuticals under that as well. And that is pretty much it. Those are, then there's procedures or there's surgery. Those are the only treatment modalities that are part of standard of practice in conventional medicine. So part of Flexner was taking out nutrition. So that's why conventional doctors don't learn about nutrition. They also are very, very ill-informed about your labs and what your labs mean and how to interpret them and how to give you practical information. That's all by design. And then Rockefeller also started funding a lot of money into the American Medical Association, which regulates licensure, okay? And then from there, they spent a lot of money in the media. They spent a lot of money in lobbying. They spent a lot of money in your politicians. They spent a lot of money in the government. Just again and again and again, right? Last year, they got fined about, I think, $60 million for paying off peer reviewers to sign off on studies. Okay, so part of the reason that RFK Jr. is in there, and I'm totally benign with this, so I'm not for what is going on, right? But there is some aspect of this that'll be interesting, which is why for me as a public health educator and me knowing all the things that I know, I'm like, oh great, we gotta get some people educated, right? So the CDC, the NIH, all of these institutions are unfortunately widely corrupt, right? They are bought, sold, paid, all sorts of different things are going on, right? And so, being an environmental lawyer, he's taken different pharmaceutical companies to court. That's why they keep kind of going in. They want to see his finances, et cetera, et cetera. So to see what interests that he may have. But it's not, it's all a whole bunch of smoke and mirrors because the other side is equally as complicit. So it's going to be interesting to see. That's why I said, like, all of that is like, it's like theater, whatever. We need to actually know what to do with our health, especially because, the health, the food. Let's talk about what actual health is. So that's disease management. So remember what I said, health and holistic health is a state that we create, right? So mentally, emotionally, physically, environmentally, ancestrally, there's all these different components and aspects of our healing, right? Of our consciousness, of our presence. And so it's a practice and it's a lifestyle. So how do lifestyles develop? They have to develop in the mind. So we have to start with shifting our mindset from a disease management mindset, a reactive mindset, a dependency on an oppressive system mindset. There's this aspect of continuing to go back to an abuser, right? That is not serving, but it's just because there's some semblance. It's like that devil, so it's like, that the system is flawed, that it's difficult, that it's not helping you, but you continue to go to the system because that's all right? So now fortunately, if you're in this class, you will know a lot more. And so because of that, denial becomes a little bit more difficult to pull off, right? You still may be able to kind of play these games with yourself, but realistically, the subconscious mind gets it, right? So we go back to before colonization, right? So here's the other thing to note, that, we're going to look at who is perpetually creating the problem and then also trying to sell us back the solution, okay? So let's talk about what builds health, right? So the air that we breathe, okay? So who polluted that? The air, the water that we drink, who polluted that? The food that we eat, what happened to that? Okay, so, let's look at all of these components, right? These are just basics. Again, basic human rights. Basic human rights. We're not even asking for housing yet. We're just asking for the bare essentials, the necessities. Please stop poisoning our food. Please stop creating these laboratory food items. I just do not believe that God makes mistakes. I think that nature is naturing. I trust nature. I trust my body. I trust my body with nature. And unfortunately, because we're living outside of nature, we're living in this conventional disease management, profit-centered, sick care system. Because we're living in that, we are literally powerless, helpless, and hopeless to the inevitability of disease process. So here's the thing. So take a deep breath. I'm going to hold your hand when I tell you this. So Rockefeller, right, when they were doing their thing, realized, the synthetics, the petroleum is making people sick. Oh no. So then what he did was he started the American Cancer Association. and then started marketing and repressing information. Okay. So it's all been about keeping everything under wraps, under wraps, under wraps. Unfortunately, we are now in the information age. So we are in the internet. So and that's also why too, we want to try to limit what we're saying and this, that, and the third. But here's the thing, all the information is out here, right? And when I went through my MPH, I learned about the entire healthcare system, and I was absolutely just devastated. Like, because this was right at the ACA and going through and learning about this, it was just absolutely heart-wrenching. However, we look at who's created these situations, right? And now we're also now looking at who's trying to sell us back the solution. So also know that RFK Jr. is backed by a lot of health influencers like Food Babe, like Dr. Mark Hyman, Parsley Health, Dr. Will Jones, all kinds of, and they're all white tea, right? They're all coming to help rescue us from chronic disease rates that are at an all-time high. But the reason that chronic disease rates are at an all-time high is because we're living outside of our original environments. I did the formula. I did what I was supposed to do. I left home, I went to school, I got a good job, I worked my butt off, and it was never, ever, ever good enough. And I lost almost myself in the process to a system, right? It wasn't necessarily me, it was people's indoctrination to the system. It was their superiority bias, it was their confirmation bias, right? What do I mean by that? We're going to learn about these two things. Superiority bias is the thought process that just because you were trained in the conventional medical system that makes you better, or that makes you a doctor that's more superior, okay? I spent the majority of my career being the cleanup crew of medicine, okay, when they have failed. And let's not remind that the third leading cause of unalivement still is medical errors. So it's never been about the science. It's about creating a system that makes you dependent upon it because it's designed to make you sick. So you'll see this communication of real doctor, right? That was all started by the Flexner Report. The Flexner Report was pretty significant. It pretty much knocked out all of our naturopathy schools, knocked out all the homeopathic schools, knocked out all the Black and Indigenous schools as well. They were able to kind of salvage Spelman, which Spelman is Rockefeller's wife's last name, but they did it kind of in in just a very sketchy way. So again, right? And let's go back to World War II during Nuremberg, right? And let's go back to the fact that we still were not under Nuremberg, meaning that Black and exclusively Black people actually have been excluded out of the Nuremberg, right? Why do we know that? Because Tuskegee happened in the 70s. Nuremberg was like around 40s. So you see, and also in the United States, we only have civil rights, not human rights. That's why understanding your healthcare and decolonizing your healthcare is key, is critical. And also protecting your data and knowing where your data is going in terms of your healthcare. Very important, because the 14th Amendment, that was the purpose of the 14th Amendment, was to protect patient-doctor information. Now they've been able to put legislators in the exam room. Now, anything that you say to your provider that's part of that conventional system can and will be held against you. Because in essence, and I'm not saying that they knew this, right? But unfortunately, the conventional doctors are complicit to the system. Because they're under the AMA, they're under that licensing body. So if they do anything outside of what's deemed their scope of practice or deemed their, standard of care, they will lose licensure or they can be intimidated, etc., right? And there's a long history of that happening to holistic doctors as well, and natural doctors and that kind of thing. And I don't get so much into the conspiracies as much. However, in Goodbye Germ Theory, he does talk about Dr. Sebi and references that, because Dr. Sebi was an indigenous healer, so he's from Honduras, and he was self-trained. So if you understand the landscape of a lot of South American countries, they don't have formalized education because post-colonization, very poor. So a lot of times these indigenous healers are self-taught and self-trained, and so that's what they do, is they begin to become practitioners. They begin to start treating themselves, and then they start treating their family, and then their friends, and then boom, and TLC Left Eye learned about Dr. Sebi somehow, and then, started to introduce him to various celebrities, and boom, that's how his whole thing kind of got started. Unfortunately, he didn't know about jurisprudence, and he didn't know about the laws in the United States and also didn't understand the medical monopoly, right? So there is a medical monopoly in the United States, okay? If you're not aware. So me as a holistic doctor, right, I do not diagnose and manage a disease. I don't want to diagnose and manage a disease. However, they own disease management. So I can't say things like I can heal, or I can't even say it. I'm like, whatever. Because it's not even our way of thinking, right? In holistic medicine, we realize it's never one thing. It's always a combination of things, right? So let's say a person, had a situation, circumstance, or event, right, outside of their control. Then they didn't have the emotional resilience to be able to bounce back from it, right? So then they go into a sad emotional state, right? Based off of the thought, right, that let's say this person, situation, or circumstance, event was not going to be there. So that triggered, right, their subconscious, which triggered their core belief of not being good enough. Okay. And so because it triggered not being good enough, it immediately brought them into a sadness, a sorrow state. And then what happens? Their action goes down, meaning that they no longer have motivation to do the things that they need to do in order to keep themselves healthy and keep themselves well. And so then what happens? They stop drinking water, they stop eating the protein, they stop, they just stop. And then what happens is protein helps the body to repair and heal. So then they go amino acid deficient, right? And then they're not eating enough, variety, so they're not getting enough antioxidants. They're being exposed to a highly toxic environment. So their nutrients are going down in their body. Now they're accumulating toxicity, right? And now ATP function is going down, mitochondrial function is going down, right? So now they're experiencing some fatigue. Now they're really tired, right? So now they go into the conventional doctor. The conventional doctor says, oh, everything's fine. We don't see anything in the labs. And they go, okay, but I'm not really feeling well. Are you sure? Yep, everything's good. So then they think, oh, it must be in my head. Right? Or, I'm not really feeling good. Let me go jump online and, oh, look, there's some health influencer. Oh, look, there's some book. Oh, look, there's always something to go look at. There's always something, right? But unfortunately, we're not trained to go within. We're not trained to identify the signs and symptoms of our own bodies. So we're constantly seeking outside of ourselves for someone to save us. And nobody is going to save us when it comes to our health. It's a practice, okay? I practice it every day. Some days I'm like, yes, I'm doing it. And other days I'm like, geez, man, tomorrow. So, like water, sometimes I don't drink half my body weight in ounces. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Most days it does, and I'm conscious of it. But if I lose consciousness of it and I just kind of take it for granted, like, oh, it's going to come, and I, get so busy focusing on work or focusing on this or focusing on that, right? I have to always prioritize myself first, okay? Because I've had to heal from deep exploitation wounds, right? And what does that come from? Ancestry, right? So deep exploitation wounds come when people's ancestral lines are conditioned to be exploited. So the nervous system gets wired to self-abandon, fawn. It shows up in various things like code switching and all kinds of nuances, right? Because we're trying to, we have no choice, right? Choice. We do have choice, right? However, we have to take our power back mentally, emotionally. Now that has cause and effect to it, so understand that, right? And this is where faith comes in and certainty without logic, right? And polarity. So we will talk a lot about the universal laws of nature, right? Because that is what we operate under. The universal laws of nature are beyond man. So man can't manipulate universal laws of nature. Man can't legislate universal laws of nature. They just are what they are, So let me see. Hold on one second. All right. So we'll talk a lot about, well, not a lot about, but we'll talk about on Wednesday, tomorrow, we'll talk more about skillful practice. We'll also talk about informed consent and what true informed consent actually is. We'll discuss patient autonomy and what that actually means, because it's important for you to understand what treatments are being recommended to you, why they're being recommended to you, what alternatives are available to you, if any, what side effects are, present, and you should be able to say yes or no without coercion, without pressure, without any sort of, pushback, right? If there is, you're not receiving proper informed consent, and therefore you don't have proper patient autonomy, right? So that becomes more of a slippery slope with this 14th Amendment kind of hanging in the breeze, right? Give it back to the states, right? So give what back to the states? Give my body back to the states, whether I am whoever I am, right? So understand how deep that these things can go, right? There are levels to this thing, right? So we want to make sure that we protect ourselves through knowledge, education, understanding, and we really know when to use a system and when a system is obsolete. Okay. And here's the thing, and even in holistic medicine, we have to have ethics. So that's why I'm trained in integrative medicine. So integrative medicine, and that was actually a whole 2-year certification course, and that is understanding how to work within the healthcare system. Okay, there's certain language, there's certain treatment methodology, there's certain standards of practice. That way, if I'm working with a patient on something natural and I identify something that needs a pharmacological agent or needs a procedure, then I can inform the patient, educate them, tell them about their options, weigh it all out for them, and then give it back to them to make choice. And I've done that many, many times. And even in fact, I've gotten back in my brick and mortar practice, I had a lot of people that would come to me like with the Hail Mary, right? And what I call the Hail Mary is, they would have gone maybe to 1 or 2 different, oncologists, and, they told them something that they didn't want to hear. And so they're coming to me looking for, some sort of root or, herbal something or some magic wand that I must own clearly. I mean, I do live in the Caribbean, but still some sort of magic wand that, I can wave to make it go away. And again, scientific process and ethics. So I have to get those medical records. I have them sign informed consent, helping them to understand I do not diagnose and manage. We support the structure and the function of the body, not managing diseases, because if we manage diseases, we're never going to get anywhere with your health. We're just going to be chasing into a system. That's where alternative medicine comes from. So, and we don't, even though I have one of my degrees is in alternative medicine is not the answer, and I'll kind of wrap back to that. So, when they come in, they want me to find some sort of solution that isn't reality. And so I have to pull those medical records. I have to pull the various different lab results. And then, I educate the patient on exactly what's going on, what their treatment options are, if they have any, and it really is dependent case by case. Every case is unique. It's not across the board. Every person is like this, because you've got, psychosocial, emotional factors, you've got genetic factors, you've got mental factors, emotional factors, environmental. There's so many different factors when you're working with human beings, right, that are very complex. And so to kind of take this one size fits all approach is really extremely flawed, and we can see why it's harming so many people. So, I would look at everything, give them their choice, and in some cases we could prevent things. In other cases, they waited too long. Really, the answer is, checking things early, right? So if you take this course and you take future courses that I teach, you'll learn how to monitor yourself daily, weekly, monthly, however you choose to monitor yourself. I wouldn't go past monthly, and it also depends on what metric you're looking at. It depends on what you're trying to, prevent. There are so many different, mechanisms. Holistic medicine is complex, okay? It's not this easy one step fits all. Like, you actually have to understand science and how science works. So we'll talk about therapeutic order. There is an actual therapeutic order that we follow. It's a structure. So we know when we refer and when we don't. But in no way is there kind of superiority, okay? I feel a little superior to them. But anyway, we're on equal footing, okay, when it comes to science and scientific process, right? And this is why I gain so much respect when working with patients and conventional doctors, because I'm result driven, right? So I'm looking at the data. It's not based off of what I feel, think, etc. It's based off of what subjective and objective data tells me, right? So even in the holistic space, we see a lot of people that don't use any data, so they're not doing subjective, which would be like a questionnaire or even an interview, and definitely not doing objective data, which means they're not looking at any labs or anything like that, and they're not putting it together. They're not formulating treatment plans, right? They're literally just using this as a hustle to sell supplements, and I absolutely can't stand it. It drives me nuts. And so you can't just detox right off the bat. So people that are selling in these like detox programs, it's really you unless the detox is really mild and not really getting much, like when you're actually detoxing the body, you have to, a lot of times when people are coming in and they're highly toxic, number one, their bodies are depleted. Minerals, vitamins, nutrients, their system just cannot take a water, a water flush or whatever you guys do. Juice cleansing. I see it all the time where people are like, oh, I don't feel good. Oh, thank you. People are like, oh, I don't feel good. I've been eating all this unhealthy food. Now I'm going to go and shock my body even more with this really harsh treatment. And it really just doesn't serve anybody. It really needs to be very gentle, very, like nature, right? Nature is like, it grows, right? It's very, the sky doesn't like, the sun, we have to get back to kind of this original pace, this flow. Way before colonization, way before industrialization, we got to get back to this flow, this kind of energy of divine order. Now, we can't do that if we're in survival mode, right? So what do we do if we're in kind of some sort of survival mode? We have to disconnect, right? And people aren't going to like this. We have to disconnect from what we don't want to see, right? What we're currently seeing is a manifestation of our current reality, okay? Now, having is evidence of wanting, so having it definitely serves you in some capacity, but we'll get to that later, right? But you're not going to shift your reality by focusing on the same thing. In fact, it's just going to be cathartic and it's going to feed on top of itself, and you're not going to get a break. So this is why I put Don Miguel Ruiz in there, Mastery of Self, because it's about coming back to self, right? And stop responding, reacting to the external. Or maybe let's turn it on itself and let's look at this external as information, right? So we're always getting information, we're getting biofeedback, right? So we're getting energetic feedback of what we want or maybe what we don't want, right? Hey! So when we're getting this feedback and let's say we see what we don't want, right? What do we need to do? We need to maybe journal it. We maybe need to write on it. We may need to kind of get to the bottom of what this thing is, right? So it doesn't keep coming back. But most people don't do that. Hello. They ignore, they repress, they deny, they, run away from it, So they prolong the inevitable. Now we're all kind of taxed in various areas of our life. So some of us are taxed in our relationships. Some of us are taxed in our finances. Some of us are taxed in our health, right? Some of us are taxed in more of our familiar way, like our family, but that goes into relationships. So there's different areas of our life, right? But who's the common denominator? It's you, okay? So you are the master creator, unfolder, circus leader, unfortunately. So if your circus has a lot of clowns in it, we may need to change the story or the show, right? Maybe we need to, or if it's like theater and it's a little dramatic, we may need to lighten it up, right? So it's all in the experience that you want to have. For me, I want to live my life in flow. I don't want to live my life in pressure. Okay, I lived my life under pressure, right? That's me leaving this kind of plantation mentality. So this is why I don't, get into those kinds of dynamics. I like to live in flow, exactly, in freedom. Thank you, Afro Spiritualists. In freedom, in grace, in peace. I really like to be inside of self. So anything that I need, I go within self. I'll teach you guys how to do this, right? Because it's this disconnect. What's happened is we've been conditioned, right, to not trust ourselves. We've been conditioned to self-abandon. We've been conditioned to really be afraid of ourselves and each other and question the truth. We've been conditioned to self-abandon all of what we know to be true and give our power away to a system that is not only failing us, but also profiting off of us. So, we make our choices. We continue to go into an oppressive system or we make a different choice. And so that's why I've created this platform. I spent many, many years, of my life studying health and healthcare. When you're so young and you lose, I didn't lose, but for me at the time, my inner child felt like I lost my hero. My mother is my absolute hero. And so, her having her psychotic break was absolutely devastating as a child. And so it was actually her psychologist that encouraged her to go back to her Afro-Indigenous ancestry and her Afro-Indigenous roots for her to reclaim her healing. And because of that combination of science, that combination of psychology, and that combination of Afro-Indigenous practices, I am here today. Because I learned all of these things as a child growing up and understanding, and then go to school and learn it in structured learning environments as well, and then put those two things together and create my own systems, really to put myself in the shoes of a patient. I've been relatively healthy most of my life, but I was a wild child and I've had a lot of accidents and I broke my neck. That's also why too I'm pretty chill now, because when I was young I was like, woo! So anyway, I broke my neck driving cars way too fast, and I had a halo for 12 weeks until I took the thing off. Watching Making the Band, this is so funny, right? And so, as I'm watching this, I'm taking it off and I go back to the doctor and they're so frustrated at me. But reality was it wasn't fitting me properly. They weren't listening to me. They wanted me to take all of these, pain meds, which I had to, because you have this erector set on your head and it's 20 pounds, and 20 pounds on this body is not really. And at the time, it was before my reduction, so my breasts are really big. It was horrible. It was so bad. It was just did not work. And what I really needed from these top doctors in Vegas was somebody to grab my hand and tell me what's going to be okay and tell me that, all the things. No, they didn't say that. They just said, you know what, you're lucky to be alive. Do you need a refill? And it was from that point, I was actually leaving healthcare at the time. I was like, I'm done with this. I don't want to be this, type of doctor that gets no respect, because I always knew I was going to be a naturopath because I learned about, these practices. I learned about Rockefeller. I learned about, the corruption of healthcare, and I could not be complicit. I just absolutely couldn't. Knowing and having the education and having the information, brings power. And so that's what I'm hoping to bring to you guys, with this experience and with Intro to Holistic Medicine, is really giving you more empowerment over your health and over your healthcare decisions and choices. Because I will tell you, most people are being bamboozled, lied to, and it's to the point where you know it, right? But you don't know any other option. And again, holistic providers or whatever, and I don't even like to call them that, but that's what they call themselves. All these other providers, they try to kind of pass off these miracles, but they miss the real basics. They miss the real essence of what health is, So that's why I kind of slow everybody down. It's okay if you haven't gotten everything register this week. We'll get in there, all is good. I'll catch everybody. Hey, if you need to pay next week, all right, cool. If you need to pay, whatever. If you just don't have it, if you have time investment, you're going to watch and you're going to engage and you're going to share, that's great. It's not about me controlling, okay? Control is an aspect of the ego, right? It's a defense mechanism. It's fear. So if I had issues with vulnerability, right? If I had challenges with that, then I would resist people coming closer to me, right? I would fight them. I would call them names. I would put distance, right? Some sort of distance, right? But instead, hey, how are you? Yes. But instead, I am choosing, right, to open this space up, right? And then because I have self-worth and self-value, I can then choose how I engage with you. So it's a mutual respect and it's a mutual exchange. And that's just the way these things go, right? So getting out of kind of this rigidity of what we think we know, and really letting ourselves be free. So I will kind of reference you back. What do you think? What do you know? And what can you prove, right? Because just because you think it, right, doesn't mean you know it, doesn't mean just because you know it doesn't mean you can prove it. And so the things that we are looking at are things that qualify on all three, right? And so that's how you know, right, that something is solid, right? You think it, you know it, and you can prove it, right? And so when you're navigating this healthcare system with, conventional or even natural holistic people, these are these questions that you need to ask so that you are an educated consumer, you are informed, and regardless, right, if you're using your health insurance or not, you're still consuming that because you're paying into that, right? So don't think because it's not coming off of your line item that it's not coming off. It is. I tend to instruct people for healthcare freedom really to go into a higher deductible plan, especially if they are not going to use the system for like primary care or disease management. If you're going to use the system more for health or if you're going to use it for if you need it for disease management, great. But if you need it for health, it's not going to serve that. So you're better off putting it in a high deductible plan, offsetting that into an HSA or an FSA account. A lot of companies will match your HSA and FSA accounts as well during open enrollment. So it's an advantage as well. Now, who even knows at this point, but it's something that can really help you. And our practice accepts it. Many practices accept it, but it can help offset your healthcare costs and expenditures. So just want to put that out there. Okay, so we talked about that. I fight to wear my glasses. I need to wear them. They're usually everywhere. I put them down and all that stuff. All right, so we talked about that. All right, cool. So as we are, oh yeah, for sure. So a high deductible. Hold on one second. Let me tell you high deductible. So, okay, so let me break this down for you really, really quick. So part of your insurance is for, let me turn this light on so it's not looking so crazy. Hold on. All right. So your insurance, think about your car insurance, right? So your car insurance is designed for catastrophic emergency, okay? It's not designed for preventative care. It's not designed for, you to get your oil changes, you to get your tires rotated, your 10,000 mile, all that. It wasn't designed for that. In fact, when the HMO was first developed, Thomas Jefferson, or I think it was Edison, I'm not sure, Edison or Jefferson, I can remember. It was a Thomas. Anyway, I think it was Edison, actually. Thomas Edison said, that the doctor of the future will give no medication, but will interest his patient in the human frame, how to pretty much manage their health, right? So he actually said that, and you'll see it's a very famous quote. It was in my my lobby or whatever for my practice, and so you can look it up. So what the quote why he actually said that was when the first HMO plan was established in the United States, and so he could see the future of healthcare, right? So the healthcare is driven by certain metrics, right? It's driven by administrative costs. 30 to 40% of your healthcare costs go to admin. So when you're paying your health insurance, 30 to 40% of that is going just to administration, right? And it's not actually going to healthcare delivery, right? So it's frustrating because even in the healthcare delivery model, what happens, right? So high wait times, inefficient appointments. Also, too, your appointments are billed per unit, right? So a unit is typically 15 minutes. And so it's like a luck of a draw. Some patients' insurance is good, some patients' insurance is not good. So a lot of times a good scheduler will schedule the doctor as much as they can, and then luck of a draw, kind of shake it up and see, whose insurance is what. So it's an extremely inefficient model. It's not centered around patient care. It's definitely more of a disease management model, especially because they get no education in nutrition. So then they're not educating their patients on nutrition. So they just tell their patients, lose weight. Okay, what does that mean, right? So not every skinny person is healthy. So what does that mean? So, they give very vague, very non-descriptive, very, just roundabout answers because they really don't know, because they're not actually trained. However, you've been trained in superiority bias and confirmation bias to kind of have that doctor is God sort of thing. And so you are trained to go into the doctor, pretty much believe anything they say, and then just accept it, right? But unfortunately, there's a lot of gaps. So when we're talking about health, we're talking about the state that we're creating. We're talking about water. We're talking about food. We're talking about meditation practices. We're talking about your work-life balance. We're talking about, even the clutter in your house. I have a course just on decluttering because I had tons of patients. Because when your mind is cluttered and your emotions are cluttered, your house is going to be cluttered. That's just the way it goes, right? So right now my house looks very much like, what is it? Like kind of like a mad scientist or whatever, got stuff over here and stuff over there, right? But how our home is, right, is a reflection. I also am trained in classical feng shui. And so your home and your car are actually a reflection of yourself. So looking at your home, how is it? Is it dirty? Does it have, leaking pipes? Like if you're leaking water, right, that means you're leaking money. So you definitely don't want that in your home, And so if there's a lot of trash everywhere, that's really you holding on to the past and being bogged down with that. And so when I would work with patients, it wasn't just on, oh, do you want an alternative medicine to your blood pressure? It was, no, let's really, really figure out, yes, exactly. It was really about, and you know what? With classical feng shui, we look at it based off of not just the bagwas and all of that, but it's based off of the date and the year that the sun last saw your home bottom, right? So when the roof went on. So then we also take your birth date, and that generates a number, and then the people in the home, and then what you actually want to create in your home, and then we create it for year after year. It pretty much, once we do it once, it pretty much holds most years with a couple tweaks and stuff, but then we balance the energy. We do different energy clearings and things like that with it. It's a very powerful practice, and what happens is like you really start to embody the energy. So I feng shuied every home I lived in. I feng shuied every business I worked in because it was part of my environment, so that I'm able to create and able to manifest the things that I want with ease, right? So if I'm in a house that doesn't have all that, or a business that doesn't have the connections for me, I'm going to not feel, I'm going to feel anxious, I'm going to feel frustrated, whatever. So I have to have a good vibe wherever I'm at. All right, so environment also goes into things like mold, heavy metal exposures, chemical exposures, all the environmental exposures, like what materials you're using on your body, your skincare products, what water you're drinking, what cleaning products you're using. So there's definitely a lot to your environment. So then from there, we go into your mental health, and we're looking at, there's a pre-work if you want to, it's not really necessary for this class, but it's some information. I have a whole lecture series that I did starting at the beginning of the year to prepare for all this. Was the mind, was about the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and helping you to really understand, where these things come from. So definitely check out that series. They're kind of, long classes. I recorded them like this. Yeah, I know. I love it. Money trees are really good. Also, if you tie a red ribbon underneath your sinks, that also can help too. Bay leaves as well. Bay leaves in your in your wallet and things like that can also generate too. So lots of really amazing things. Like when we get really back connected to nature again, and out of this this just jungle city, this concrete, sort of wilderness that we're all in. And so when we get really back connected with nature again, it really helps our electromagnetic frequencies. It helps our emotional health, our mental health. So definitely take some time out and be in nature for sure. So the mind is split up, like I said, primitive mind, which that controls all your neurological reactions. So that's your fight or flight response. Hey, Jasmine, your fight or flight response, right? And so we go into either two components. We're either in love or we're in fear. If we're in fear, we're in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So we understand, those reactions and really those behaviors and why those behaviors show up. Then we also look at our subconscious mind. So our subconscious mind is our experiences, perceptions of those experiences, beliefs, and core beliefs, and then we defend those, right, with our defense mechanisms, which is part of our ego. Our ego has 5 components to it, right? When it gets triggered, right, it goes into anger, control, pride, hatred, and judgment. So when we see those behaviors, we know that the ego has detected that something is not safe, someone is not safe. Remember, a situation, circumstance, or event, it can be anything that it detects outside of itself that is not safe. It doesn't deem itself safe. So then it creates those reactions, whatever survival tactic that you have used consistently and frequently that the mind will go to. However, it'll go to its first component, and then if that doesn't work, it will keep going. That's classical conditioning, right? So people are conditioned. We see that with Pavlov, right? So remember with Pavlov, back Psych 101, for anybody that took that, you have the dog, right? And it ran to one side of the cage, and Pavlov, had the hose and put on it, and then the dog ran to the other side of the cage, and they were still hosing, and no matter where the dog went, the dog had hosed, that was getting hosed with water. So then the dog goes, you know what, I'm just going to sit here then. And so it's this learned helplessness is what came out of that. And so, we can get into a learned helplessness if we're triggered, right? So when something outside of ourselves, people, places, situation, circumstance, or event outside of ourselves gets triggered, right? Then what happens, or something outside of ourselves triggers an emotion, which is an incongruence of the subconscious and the conscious, right? It triggers this emotional reaction. I have a choice. I can choose to be reactive, or I can choose to be proactive. If I choose to be reactive, I choose to be the victim, right? I'm holding myself in that victim state because I'm saying that this is happening to me. Otherwise, I choose to observe. If I choose to observe situation, circumstance, people, place, or event, then I'm able to move past that victim consciousness and instead elicit more of a breakthrough faster. So it's not that you're not going to have breakdowns. You're going to have breakdowns all the time. It's how resilient you can be emotionally, right? Mentally and emotionally to get back up into action. Because our thoughts create our emotions, and then our emotions create our actions create our behaviors create our habits, and our habits create our lifestyle. So I'm teaching you a holistic lifestyle. So I'm starting at the result, right? The symptom. So your diagnosis is just a symptom. It's a result that you've created. It's an accumulation of all that we just went through. Not to mention, right, so we look at the emotional, that was just the mental, right? So now we look at the emotional trauma, emotions that were not processed, that we internalized, that we suppressed, that we repressed, avoid, repress, deny, right? And then we look at our our spiritual connections, exactly, right? Our trust in self, our intuition, because remember, energy, emotions are energy in motion, right? So if we have a lot of stagnant emotions, right, then what's going to happen is we're going to be disconnected. We're going to be operating out of fear. We're going to be operating out of lack. We're going to be operating out of judgment. We're going to be operating out of control because we're going to try to avoid the emotional reaction or the emotional response, but we're just avoiding ourselves, right? So we become disconnected. We're not operating in love. We're operating out of fear. So in everything that comes with fear, right? So now we're breaking down our spiritual connection, right? Which breaks down our connection to ancestors, because when we really start to process through our emotions, right? Our grief, our sadness, our sorrow, our anger, our suffering, all these things, right? And really get to the real of it, then when we break through to the other side, we actually become more connected, more spiritual, more intuitive, more centered, more at peace, and more really able to hear, right, past our own mind to be able to be led. So we're not fighting anymore. We're not trying to figure out the how anymore. We're living in flow. We're living in harmony. We're living in sync. We're not colonizing ourselves. So we're out of balance. A lot of us are. So you can see, right, this result of disease management doesn't really work because disease, so we look at disease, what is a disease? It's a pathology. What is a pathology? It's the study of. What is the study of? Yes, I do. Pathos, root word, suffering, Latin. What does that mean, right? That's all it means. Pathos, root word, means suffering. So I'm going to have somebody else manage my suffering. Yeah, I still practice. I just do it all virtual now. Because when I was in brick and mortar, boy, it was like Dr. Steele, Dr. Steele, Dr. Steele, Dr. Steele. Now you schedule Dr. Steele. Zoom link, baby. No, yes. So, yeah, having, being like in close proximity because people don't have boundaries, right? And so I have to create these boundaries. Remember, it's about creating a life that really works for you. I love to teach. I love to help people heal. I've helped so many people heal, but I also love my own space too. I love my own privacy. Like we're super quiet. Like we can go on a walk, not constantly like so I've lived in the public eye for a long time. So thank you for being understanding of that. So I'm not in Virginia Beach anymore. I was there for 15 years. I was on the plantation, not anymore. So now I'm free and liberated for whatever that means. All right, so a disease, right? Again, pathos, pathology, study of. Pathos, root word in Latin, means suffering, right? So suffering, right? I don't want my suffering to be managed. I want to transform my suffering, right, into my joy, into my happiness, into my peace, into my triumph, into my whatever it is that I want to manifest and turn it into. Remember, energy cannot be created nor destroyed, but it can be transformed. And remember, emotions are just energy in motion. So if we stop avoiding our emotions, repressing our emotions, denying our emotions, we start to build more emotional intelligence and resilience and connectivity. What happens is we start living more in the flow of our higher self and less in more of this back and forth power struggle. I got to do this, I got to do that. It's just too much, right? Because we're forcing and we're operating out of fear and lack. We're not operating out of true health and peace and joy and the things we actually would want in our lives. So here, let me check my timer really quick. All right, perfect. I got about another 30 minutes. I'll be with you guys. So if you haven't joined my intro to holistic medicine, please do. The link is in the bio. I'm still working on some of the back end stuff. As soon as you click the link, it'll go to a form. You can go ahead and register by filling out the form there. Then it will send you an email. And then the email will kind of further give you instructions. It'll send you 2 emails. It'll send you one initial email, just kind of, letting you know you're in, so to speak, and then another email that'll prompt you to choose your group. There are 3 communities that I have depending on your intent. That way I can focus the content to that intent because I do serve a lot of people. So the first intent is a holistic health coaching cohort. That's if you want to be a holistic health coach and your intent is to use this class as like a prerequisite to be able to do our holistic health coaching program. There's 3 CEUs for it because it is a 12-week course and it has curriculum and all of that. If you have some organizational body that you need it for, please let me know and we can coordinate that. The holistic lifestyle community is really just for you and learning for you and your community and your family. It's just a really good, safe, inclusive container for you to learn. I've got some resources I still have to throw in there, like the chakra guide, and I also want to throw one other thing in there too. I can't remember. But I will definitely kind of be throwing more resources and stuff in there. If you're already in there, there's tons of resources already. So please feel free to move around the space. There's tons of stuff in there. Yes, there is one as well called Pure Black. And that one is strictly for Black Americans, Black people, not just Black Americans. Lordy, I speak to a lot of Black Americans, but no, it's worldwide, it's global. In fact, I have people from Africa and stuff like that are in that group as well. And so who reach out to me for different healthcare advice. It's easier for me to put everybody in a group, and that way, I can disseminate information. But, and also our coursework will cover all 3 groups, but I will give very specific information to each individual individual group. So it just keeps the conversation more focused. And so Pure Black is, with that Afro-Indigenous lens. Other people can join it, but please be respectful. You will be booted. There are policies. So just FYI with that. So I have 3 communities, and you can join them. You can join the Holistic Lifestyle community just by clicking the second link down from Intro to Holistic Medicine. There's one right down there. And then in that particular one, it will open up to the group. There is the course in there already. There's a couple tabs. There's one that says events, and it has when I will go live. Like before, earlier this morning, I scheduled this live event, so at least when I knew it in my schedule. And so just kind of pay attention to that. It'll send you alerts. I also have the classes that I teach already this week. Other classes can go in there also too. If you are a holistic provider yourself and you are interested in teaching for me and my school, please let me know. I'd be happy to have that conversation. I'll work on a form for that if you're interested. Okay, so you join your community, and then there's the coursework in there. Definitely go check things out, engage, introduce yourself, that sort of thing. There's lots of resources available for you. Okay, great. So mosey on down the road. Yes, I do know that. Exactly. So there's 3 different communities. Yes, there's 3 different communities that I have, that I created. And yes, so again, right, when you live a holistic lifestyle, you live very consciously, you live very intentionally, right? So, I'm already like usually when people kind of get onto things, I'm usually pretty far ahead of them, just because, again, I don't hold on to all that emotional baggage, right? So I don't operate my life out of a space of fear, right? So I'm not like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. That's a very reactionary kind of situation, right? You notice like this whole thing, like I have things already done. I want to get to, things are already done. I'm in the groove. We're just flowing with it. Oh, okay, cool. Yep. All right, sweet. Click right in, because we're in the flow, right? And our flow is based off of what our focus is based off of what result we want to create, right? So there is structures for creating a result. So what are those structures? It has to be specific, right? Remember? It has to be, and these are goals. So let's reference goals versus results. So remember, goals are specific, measurable, right? Attainable, realistic, and time bound. So those are our goals, right? But we want to create results, right? But we have to start with a goal. So if we start with a goal, we start to flush. Think of a goal as like really more so us flushing these things out, and more so us brainstorming, right? Because then when we create a result, the result is what we want to feel and think and be, how we want to be when we've achieved this. Because it's not just about the goal, because you can hit the goal and then, it'd be horrible, right? And you not want it to happen, right? And so it's kind of one of those, be careful what you wish for. And so really, in order to align, right, you have to mentally and emotionally be prepared for it. And that's why we're talking about the pentacle of your success. So the pentacle of success develops between 9 and 12 years old. And what that is where you feel like you are safe enough, right, to pentacle of success. So let's say something happens. Let's say you go viral. Let's say you win the lottery, something big that you weren't expecting that just all of a sudden happened, right? Boom, right? All of a sudden, if it's beyond that pentacle of success, what's your conscious mind and your feeling of belonging, right, is at, what'll happen is you'll sabotage it to bring yourself right back down to the pentacle of your success. So this is why we sabotage. This is why we make different decisions, or we don't make different decisions. Because remember, what'll happen is when that big something comes, right, it won't trigger love. We won't be triggered with gratitude and connection. Instead, we'll be triggered with fear, because it's beyond what we thought was possible. It's incongruent with our thoughts and our feelings. And so because of that, we get overwhelmed. Our nervous system gets activated. And now all of a sudden we go to work trying to avoid it, repress it, deny it, sabotage it, break it down, whatever. Makes sense? So, we want to tone our nervous system. We want to get our mind prepared about what it is we want to create, right? So after I left my practice, in 2023, I closed it down mostly because it was like spiritually, I was like, you're done. You're gone. You're done. Even if I wanted to stay in it, I couldn't, just because that's what happens when you're living in flow. When the universe, God, creator, your ancestors said it's time, it's not one of those like negotiations. It's not really like you can sit and talk and be like, well, but I was thinking of, no, it's more of like, you need to go. That makes sense. But what would you say to someone who has never had imposter syndrome? Okay, so imposter syndrome, you have to define imposter syndrome, because we all as human beings struggle with imposter syndrome because we have a sense of wanting to belong. And that happens with our conscious mind, and happens in that pentacle of success, because it's tied to our sense of belonging, right? So that would be a blind spot. I struggle with this, especially, where is that? Finding safety in new spaces. Exactly. So the nervous system, right, is going to be very trepidatious, right? It's going to be very, I'm not sure about this. And that is actually healthy, right? You should, that's why I said, we're going to do this all week. We're going to get this going all week. Why are we doing this? Because it's something new, right? So it's something new. I'm new. This experience is new. But I own a health technology company. I was in clinical practice a long time. I own a school. These are things that I've been working on, right? But I created these results, right? So what do you mean? I wrote all this stuff down, right? I wrote my husband down. I wrote my business down. Everything was intentional. Even finding my home was intentional. We've done energetic clearings. Everything in my life is very conscious. It's not because I want to be prepared, but not from a preparedness, fear, scarcity, oh my God, lack, zombie apocalypse fear. No, more of, okay, I'm getting this message, right? And I'm getting this inspired action to do this, to do that, to do this, to do that, right? This is not a mental thing. And this, I think a lot of times men have a little bit more challenge with this, just because of that emotional body. It's really that flow. That's why women, right? We very much are, or women identifying, right? We're very much in the flow, in that energetic flow. Whereas that man's role, or that identified male, is very much searching for that, protecting that, providing that, looking, because that is all that indoctrination, right? So when we leave those models, right, we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. But unfortunately, if you are a protector, provider, or you've been harmed and you've got some trauma, betrayal, right, that nervous system is not going to be able to let it down easy. It's going to have to be a real internal battle. Yeah, so all that means, yeah, so coming into new spaces is just one thing, right? But in terms of language and conscious communication, right? So here's what I do first, is I take a step back and I reflect first, and I look for information first, and then kind of go there. Yes. Yeah, and so anxiety is an emotion, right? It's just triggered based off of fear, and physiological, right? So a lot of times, if you have blood sugar dysregulation issues, that can affect, your anxiety, etc. So there's those things like that. Yeah, and all of us to some degree have some sense of imposter syndrome, because the system wants conformity. The system wants us all to be, wherever we're fitting in the system, right? And so in order for us to, because it's transactional, right? White supremacy is very transactional. So in order to transact, right, money, resources, whatever, survival, I have to self-abandon in some essence. So I'm not actually acting like myself. So that's what Du Bois was talking about with double consciousness, right? So we have this mask that we present to the world, but then we have this other separate person, right? And for me, that double consciousness got to be way too much because, in the roles that I was in, I have to be authentic. And so as long as I could placate some aspect of the patient's comfort zone, then they were fine. However, you lose the integrity of the work. And so I would take stands where stands needed to be taken, especially with, patients that, again, that resistance and that subconscious mind is fighting and doesn't want healing. Yeah, so it's very subtle for sure. Yeah, and going into new spaces again, and so we're breaking these things down into our logic, our emotion, and our physical body, right? So I'm making a conscious decision to change the way I'm speaking out of fear that I'm not going to belong, right? So I'm compartmentalizing a part of myself. I'm burying a part of myself to get transacted, whatever, like if love, respect, money, it doesn't really matter what it is. But I'm not being my true self, because my true self would mean that I could say anything that I want to this person with freedom, without fear of retribution. I don't feel like anything that I say is going to harm, which means that you have to deconstruct even more within yourself to be able to communicate powerfully, right? And be willing to universal laws of nature, cause and effect. Be willing to deal with the effects of you taking a stand, because sometimes you have to break those cycles. I've told stories about how I unconscious, right? I hire my mom like multiple times, right? In different people, in different employees. And finally, when I recognized it and cut that cycle, right, I had to really solidify, I am a sovereign human being. I am a sovereign human being. I'm a sovereign human being, right? Just to disconnect from not just those people, but the energies that were running through those people. So it gets pretty deep at times. So let me see. Yeah, exactly. So again, so Erica, right? So I'm Erica and Dr. Steele. So in a professional setting, I'm Dr. Steele. Why am I Dr. Steele? Because it puts a barrier in between you, the public, and Erica, right? It gives me some sort of space, okay? In a professional context, because really, Erica, you don't really know Erica. Like, you're not really, this is Erica per se, but I'm still in my teaching element. I'm still in my doctoring element, right? So my husband doesn't ask me doctor questions. My husband doesn't ask me healthcare related questions. He doesn't ask me none of that. He doesn't care. Half the time he's like, whatever, he's got his own healthcare regimen going on that I sometimes, turn my eye up at, but I digress, so there is a different human being, right, than who actually serves you in terms of your healthcare delivery, and that's just natural, right? And so otherwise, I'm not going to be walking around 24/7, teaching about colonization of healthcare, and although I could walk around and talk about it all day. However, I don't, right? And so we subtly, right, move, and so it's all this kind of even exchange. I don't mind giving parts of Erica, right, as long as there's mutual respect, right? But I don't bring Erica out from the beginning. So when people greet me and they say, "Oh, hey, Erica," or "Hey, Dr. Erica," I go, "Hey, it's Dr. Steele," right? And that's just something to put that barrier up and say, "Hey," right? There is a level of respect there. So just to say it. All right. So there's that. Let me see if there's anything else. Okay. So we're going to put a very critical lens to everything that we are viewing, everything that we're looking at, everything that we're exploring, simply because we want to make effective decisions and choices for ourselves. And so we don't want to continue to do the same behaviors that got us here and got us sick to begin with. So there is always kind of like a honeymoon period. There's like a, hey, this is so cool, it's so exciting. And then there's this inevitable, this actually is work, right? And so this is also why I've kind of structured the class the way I have. So it really engages you from so many different vantage points. I did send a survey out if you can complete that for me, just so I know the learning experience that you want. I have lots of webinars, I have lots of guides, I have lots of challenges that we can do, all kinds of different things. Like, we have to decide if you're in the Wellness Collective, which is if you kind of have your certificate, or you're you paid pretty much, right? You get a certification, but you're also in this Wellness Collective container that's, specialized, similar to your Intro to Holistic Medicine, but it's almost this bonus course where we really work you through the mind. We have a workbook, and we're really kind of working you through your mental health, working you through getting clear on the results you want to create, especially, as you're embarking on this, because we want to make sure that you're making conscious decisions. And so, cool. Yeah. No, you're not late. You're right on time. You just crash landed here. So to register for Intro to Holistic Medicine, this is all registration week. To register for the class, you just click link in my bio. In fact, in the Intro to Holistic Medicine playlist, in the second video, it shows you exactly how to do it. You click the link in the bio. It'll prompt you to leave TikTok or YouTube, and then there's a form to complete. You complete the form, boom, boom, boom. It'll send you the emails, and then just follow the emails and follow the lives, and you should be good. And so that Wellness Collective also too really kind of organizes it for you so that it personalizes it to you as well. I also working on a companion app as well, like in terms of the course, where it kind of gives you every single day with a little additional media. So I'll launch that. I'll let you guys know when that's completed so you can take a look at it. And so I'm really excited about teaching you guys. I will be probably on live tomorrow morning to just kind of, again, help people register and whatnot. And then Wednesday night, I teach the first class. Again, if you don't make the first class, or, people find me tomorrow, it's okay, because it's all in the course shell. Right after the class, I'm going to put it right in your intro class. So when you're in your community, you'll see an events tab to see when I'm going to be on live. On the day of, I just kind of throw it in there, but ones that are already scheduled. So we'll pull some other classes in there. And also under learnings is your Intro to Holistic Medicine class. So you'll just click on that, and it has all of the readings that we're going to work on. There's a part 1, which we're going to go on Wednesday to really get the conversation going. On Wednesday at 7 o'clock, we're going to kind of set the stage and talk about holistic medicine and where it is and scope of practice and all that. And then we're going to have a longer session on Saturday for 2 hours at 11 a.m. And so there'll be discussions throughout. And then also, really this week is just all registration and discussion. So it's not like you don't have to have the app downloaded or anything like that. Because we're not into health tracking until next week. So next week we're going to talk about subjective tracking, and then you'll be good. So just kind of take it as it goes. And again, I'm like total circus leader. So whenever people come in, I just kind of like, okay, and then move them wherever. Just everybody kind of welcome everybody. All right, so I'm going to jump off because I have a patient, and then I have some other work I have to get accomplished, and I want to see what's going on with my honey. So, all right. Well, thank you guys so much for attending the info session for Intro to Holistic Medicine. I hope to see you guys around in the communities, in the class, as well as online. And you guys have an amazing evening for sure.